Who are you? And what are you doing here? I've never seen you around before.
I just moved into this neighborhood. I'll be staying next door.
Mama, the man next door gave me my ball back. He's
Zoe,
real nice.
who told you to talk to him? You don't know this man. I can't take this.
You didn't ask for it.
I don't take charity.
It's not charity. Consider a neighbor loan. Pay it back whenever you want.
Everything has been arranged by Mr. Marcus Cole. I'm sorry, did you just say Marcus Cole? Yes, Cole Capital Group, $2 billion private equity firm.
She looked back once and smirked. She had no idea the man with the bag was worth $200 million. She looked back once and smirked. She had no idea the man with the bag was worth $200 million. The summer sun was melting the asphalt on Maplewood Drive when Marcus Cole turned onto the quiet suburban street carrying nothing but an old leather duffel bag and a one-way bus ticket stub in his back pocket. He wore a faded red button-down shirt, slightly wrinkled, dark jeans, worn-out work boots that had seen better days. He walked slowly, deliberately, taking in every detail of the neighborhood like a man who had forgotten what ordinary life felt like, because he had. For the past 12 years, Marcus Cole had lived behind glass, skyscraper offices, private jets, penthouse suites in Atlanta, New York, and Dubai. He was the founder and CEO of Cole Capital Group, a private equity firm worth nearly $2 billion. His face had graced the cover of Forbes twice. His phone never stopped ringing. Until the day he made it stop himself. 3 weeks ago, Marcus had handed his phone to his assistant, walked out of his 42nd floor office and disappeared. No press release, no announcement, just a man who needed to remember who he was before the money told him who to be. Naomi Carter was watering the roses in front of her rental house when she saw him. She straightened up, hand shielding her eyes from the sun, and watched the stranger walk down her block. She took in the duffel bag, the wrinkled shirt, the worn boots. Her eyes moved up and down with a kind of quiet judgment that people sometimes didn't even realize they were making. Another broke man, she thought, probably moving into Miss Henderson's rental next door. She wasn't cruel by nature, she just had no patience for struggle anymore. Not since her ex-husband had left her drowning in $50,000 of shared debt, a mortgage she couldn't afford, and a daughter to raise alone. Naomi Carter had clawed her way through every inch of the last 2 years, and somewhere along the way her softness had quietly packed its bags and left too. She turned back to her roses. Marcus noticed her. He noticed the way she looked, stunning, even in cut-off shorts and a gardening glove on one hand. He noticed the tension in her shoulders, the tired set of her jaw that didn't match how young she actually was. He noticed the stack of unopened mail peeking out of her mailbox, rubber banded together like a problem she wasn't ready to face. He didn't say a word. He just walked up the porch steps of the house next door, set his duffel bag down and pulled out a key. Naomi glanced back once, just once, over her shoulder, caught his eye for half a second. Then she turned away and went inside. The first week they barely spoke. Marcus settled into the empty rental like a man on a mission. He didn't order furniture. He didn't call anyone. He walked to the corner store in the mornings, made his own coffee, and spent long hours sitting on the porch, reading worn paperback novels. He fixed the broken gate latch himself without being asked. He helped Mrs. Henderson carry groceries up the driveway without introducing himself. Naomi watched all of this from her kitchen window. She noticed that he never had visitors, never made noise, never seemed to be on his phone, which was unusual enough that it made her curious. Most men his age, early 40s, broad-shouldered, clearly healthy, were either glued to screens or constantly performing for someone. Marcus Cole performed for nobody. On a Thursday evening, Naomi's daughter Zoe, 8 years old with her mother's sharp eyes and her father's stubborn chin, ran across the yard chasing a soccer ball that had bounced under the fence between properties. Marcus retrieved it before she could, handed it back through the fence slats with a quiet smile. "Thank you," Zoe said brightly. "No problem, little one." That was it. But Zoe came home talking about the nice man next door for the rest of the night. The confrontation, when it came, was almost accidental. 2 weeks into his stay, Marcus was sitting on his porch when he heard raised voices coming from Naomi's house. Not arguing, panic. He stepped off the porch and walked to the edge of the property just in time to see Naomi standing in her driveway, phone pressed to her ear, face tight with barely controlled fear. "I understand, but I need more time. I just need 60 more days, please." She stopped, listened. Her face went still in the way faces do when the news is the worst possible kind. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, thank you. She hung up. She stood there for a long moment with her back to him, shoulders rising and falling slowly. Then she seemed to sense him standing there because she turned around sharply. Can I help you? Her voice was clipped, defensive. I wasn't trying to listen, Marcus said. I just heard, are you okay? I'm fine. The wall went up instantly. I don't need anything from anyone. He held up his hands. Okay. He went back inside. But the next morning, when Naomi went to her mailbox, she found a sealed white envelope tucked between the electric bill and a credit card statement. No name on the outside. She opened it, standing right there on the sidewalk. Inside was a handwritten note on plain paper. Your roses are beautiful. So is your strength. Your neighbor. Beneath the note was a personal check for $10,000, made out to cash, signed with nothing but an initial. Naomi stared at it for a full minute. Then she marched straight to his door and knocked hard. Marcus answered, coffee in hand, looking completely unbothered. I cannot take this, she said, holding up the check. You didn't ask for it. I don't take charity. It's not charity, he said calmly. Consider it a neighbor loan. Pay it back whenever you want, or don't. I won't lose sleep either way. She searched his face for the catch, the string attached, the angle, the agenda that men always had. She found nothing, just steady brown eyes and an expression that was almost frustratingly peaceful. She took the check. Something shifted after that. They started talking in the evenings. First, just brief exchanges across the yard. Weather, neighborhood gossip, Zoe's soccer games. Then longer conversations that stretched past sundown, sitting on their separate porches with the street quiet between them. Marcus never talked about himself in specifics. He talked about ideas, about what it meant to build something, about the difference between wealth and richness, about how the most successful people he'd ever known were the ones who remembered exactly where they came from. Naomi talked more than she expected to, about Zoe's school, about the catering business she was trying to start from her kitchen, about how she'd had a dream once that she'd almost given up on completely. Why almost? Marcus asked one night. She was quiet for a moment. Because someone I trusted told me it wasn't practical, that I should be realistic. She paused. I believed him for too long. And now? She looked out at the street. Now I think practical is just a word people use when they're too scared to go after what they actually want. Marcus smiled at that. A real one. Not the polished, peer-approved version he'd worn for a decade at investor dinners. I think, he said quietly, you're going to be just fine, Naomi Carter. She looked at him sideways. You don't even know me. I know enough. He left on a Monday, no announcement. Just the sound of a car, not a bus this time, an unmarked black SUV, pulling up to the curb early in the morning. Marcus came down the porch steps with his same old duffel bag. He paused at the property line and looked over at Naomi's house. She was standing in the doorway in her robe, holding her coffee, watching him. You never told me what you do, she said. He smiled. I build things. What kind of things? Companies mostly, sometimes people. He tilted his head slightly. I'm going to send someone to meet with you next week about your catering business. She's the best small business development consultant in Atlanta. Don't say no. Naomi frowned. Marcus, she's already paid for, non-negotiable. He picked up his bag. Take care of Zoe. The SUV door closed. He was gone. Naomi didn't understand until 3 days later. The consultant arrived as promised. Sharp, efficient, with a leather portfolio and an attitude that brooked no nonsense. Within the first 10 minutes, she had laid out a full business development plan for Naomi's catering company, complete with startup funding already approved through a small business grant foundation. Who set this up? Naomi asked. The consultant smiled. Marcus Cole. Naomi went very still. I'm sorry, Marcus Cole? Cole Capital Group? The consultant raised an eyebrow. You didn't know? Naomi sat back in her chair slowly. She thought about the wrinkled red shirt, the worn boots, the old duffel bag, the man who fixed gate latches and read paperbacks on the porch and listened, really listened, like she was the most interesting person in the world. She thought about the one glance she'd thrown over her shoulder the first day she saw him, the dismissal she hadn't bothered to hide. Her eyes burned. 6 months later, Naomi's table catered its first corporate event, a private dinner for 300 guests at a downtown Atlanta venue. The reviews were extraordinary. The bookings that followed were immediate and overwhelming. On opening night, a bouquet of white roses arrived backstage with no card. Naomi smiled. She knew. Some people walk into your life looking like nothing, carrying an old bag, wearing a wrinkled shirt, drawing no attention at all. And those are exactly the ones who change everything.